What was he talking about? He was talking about the other day. He said, when you get out of the shower, you're
all right, if you have not tackled part B yet, while you're still in your group of 4, make sure that you're ready to explain to me why the temperature drops in that unit. Go.
Warms up.
It comes to the same thing with a different set of logic. I can understand how our line of thinking better fits.
You can't sit there for an hour and 15 minutes to listen to someone lecture. My attention span, and I'm sitting there concentrating, is about 20 minutes. If it's just a one-way communication. And so, let's say he'll introduce a concept, talk through it, and the students may think they understand it by watching a professor perform it on the board. And usually it's pretty straightforward, but the application of it is so much different. He'll cut the class and say, turn to the person on your left, turn to the person on your right. Okay, you guys are a team. Now look at this problem, say textbook problem 13B, and there'll be parts A, B, C, and D. Turn to your partner, explain part A. Your other partner, turn to them, explain part B. What that does is, instead of thinking you understand it, going home and doing your homework that night, and just suffering for 2.5 hours because you thought you grasped that concept, but just there may be one thing that's holding you back. So instead of floundering for hours, you're floundering for minutes. And either that person can tell you, or you're off the hook a couple minutes from now, and you know what you don't understand. And you don't, in a traditional learning environment, you don't challenge yourself to learn that. And yet Dr. Felder really kind of engages you, challenges you to do it while you're there, on the spot, and yet you can ask him minutes later. So it saves you a lot of time in the long run.
I'd like you to identify a partner and with whom you're going to work, and then I'll see if anybody is unpartnered. We've got to get everybody paired here to the greatest possible extent. Okay, do that. 10 seconds. Who doesn't have a partner? Okay. Who's here? Who does not have a partner? Okay, Tim, that you?
I'm Rebecca Brent, Faculty Development Co-Director of the Southeastern University and College Coalition for Engineering Education, or SUCCEED. Rich Felder, whom you just saw beginning a session in his introductory sophomore chemical engineering class, is the other co-director. One of the main messages in the workshops Rich and I give comes from a large body of research on learning. People develop skills by trying things and getting feedback, not by having someone else tell them what they're supposed to know. This means that the way to make your classes more effective is to get away from non-stop lecturing and use some active learning, regularly giving the students something to do during class besides watch and listen to you. You may get them to work alone or in small groups, to ask and answer questions, solve problems, explain, discuss, argue, brainstorm, anything that gives them practice in the skills you want them to develop. In this tape, we'd like to show you what active learning looks like. The scenes you'll see were shot in a single 75-minute class period. The class was roughly 90 students in a fixed-seat auditorium, the kind of setting most faculty members would say you can't do active learning in. Long after the semester was over, several of the students were interviewed about the course. You already heard from Reeves Anderson, and later you'll hear more from him and 3 other students.
I'm Rich Felder. What you'll see me doing with the class is an active learning exercise called Thinking Aloud Pair Problem Solving, TAPS for short. In the first clip, you saw me getting the students into pairs. In the next clip, you'll see me take a couple of minutes to set the stage for the problem they're going to work through, and then I turn the students loose. Watch and listen to them when they get to work. That's where you'll really see how active learning functions. The kind of problem that we're looking at now instead of me giving you what's coming in and out and asking you how much heat do you need, I'm going to give you what's coming in and how much heat you add. Or I may use the magic word adiabatic, which is just another way of saying I'm telling you how much heat you're adding. How much heat are you adding if I say adiabatic? None. Okay, that's what it means. So that's just a special case of what we're talking about here. And now the problem's going to be to find T. I want you in your pairs now to designate one of you is person A, one of you is person B, the three-person team, one of you be C. Just arbitrarily designate who's A and who's B. Okay, do that. Okay. Take a look at this sheet called adiabatic flash evaporator. What I want you to do now in this first part, okay, Stephen, sit there, you two partner up. What I want you to do in this first part is everybody individually read through that process description, starting with a mixture containing 25 mole %. Don't start doing it until I give you the whole story. All right? Read through the process description up until you get to part A. So that's the description, the flow chart, a data table, all right? And that's that. Then I want, in this first part, I want A to do the explaining, and I want B to do the questioning. A, your job is to explain what's going on in this process to B. All right? What is the system? What's it designed to accomplish? Why is the flowchart labeled the way it is? Is it labeled completely? And what are we being asked to calculate? Okay, that's all A does. B, you're questioning. A says anything that you don't understand, ask, what does that mean? Or why is this that way? Or something like that. Just keep asking questions. And then your other job as questioner is to offer hints. If A doesn't quite understand something and you do, you can help out. Right? If both of you are stuck, raise your on something, or there's something you don't, neither of you understands, raise your hands, and I'll come over and try to help. I may have to do some scrambling over knees to do it, but we'll do what we can. All right, any questions about what we're doing? Okay, go. Read it individually. A, explain the problem statement to B.
And high pressure too, so it's all liquid coming out of our vapor stream on the top.
Okay, remember, I'm going to be calling on a couple of you to explain things to me, so make sure you're ready with everything.
The vapor pressure.
Did you notice in the last clip that at one point Rich reminded the students that he was going to call on some of them to tell him what they came up with? That's really important. If students are asked to work in groups on something, and they know you're just going to ask for volunteers, many of them may just sit there instead of working. However, if they know you could call on any of them, they don't want to be embarrassed by having nothing to say, and so they do the work. It might not happen right away, but eventually the students get the point that active learning is not just something you're doing to torture them. It's really in their interest.
I think his class really focuses on an interactive learning process. It's not just the teacher talking to the students, it's like both ways. And he really wants the students to be actively participating in class, so it's more like you're learning as the class goes on instead of just sitting there and just kind of absorbing stuff. And so he's really putting the focus on the students and the professor working together.
Yeah, he had a great way of making you talk to the other person and explain the situation, almost be a teacher in the class to your fellow student. He would do a lot of you be person A, you be person B, explain person B, explain to person A what we're doing in this problem, how this works, how this works, how this works, and then do it the other way around. So you took on the teaching role also as a student. And it was greatly beneficial because, as anyone knows, to be able to teach something to someone makes it stick in your head a lot better.
In the next clip, I stop the activity and call on students. Some may not have had time to finish the task I gave them, but that's okay. The idea is just to get them engaged, not necessarily to reach closure. We'll all do that together. After I make sure everyone is on the same page, I have them switch roles and proceed to the next part of the problem. Then I stop them again and have the pairs share their answers with other pairs, which is another effective active learning technique. Aaron, what's going on in this process? Okay, so you got a liquid coming in at 3 components at a high pressure, and he said a key thing there. Why is the pressure high? Yeah, you don't want it to be vaporizing in the feed pipe. All right, you want to make sure that it stays liquid until it gets into the evaporator, which is where it's supposed to evaporate. Right, and then it goes to a low pressure and separates into 2 components. What's the problem asking me to find? Okay, Glenn.
I want you to find TAD.
All right, wants me to find the adiabatic temperature. What temperature am I going to be coming out?
And the components of the streams.
I'm sorry?
The components of the
Yeah, how much is going this way, how much is going that way? What are the compositions of my 2 product streams? I'm going to need to calculate that. Okay, reverse roles in your pairs now. I want B to take a look at A. What can you say about the value of the adiabatic temperature based on the information given? Obviously, you can't give me a value for it, but can you say anything at all about what that value must be? And if you are able to do A successfully before I stop you, go on and start taking a look at B. Why does the temperature drop in the evaporator? All right? B, explain to A. A, ask questions. Give hints if necessary. Go.
Well, you know what they are. Well, it's right here, but also it's the temperature. This unit drops, and therefore
You're watching a fully engaged class, which is something you don't see too often in standard lectures. Since none of these activities last for more than about 3 minutes, and most take a lot less, the students stay on task. That's an important active learning tip. Never let them go for more than 3 minutes at a stretch without stopping to process.
What they were doing there wasn't easy. They weren't just working through mathematical calculations, but were being asked to explain physical phenomena. What happens in this process? Why does it happen that way? Doing that kind of thing takes high-level thinking. If I just ran the explanation by them in a lecture, they wouldn't understand it at all, although they might think they did.
Next, Rich will stop them and draw the explanations from them to make sure they get the basic idea. And then he'll lecture for a couple of minutes to try and deepen their understanding. Remember, active learning doesn't mean you give up lecturing. You just make sure lecturing isn't the only thing you're doing. One more point. People often ask what you do in active learning when you call on students and they don't know or give you an incomplete or wrong answer. Watch how Rich handles those situations. He makes sure that wrong answers aren't allowed to stand, but he's casual about it so he doesn't embarrass anyone.
Mohan, what did you decide about T adiabatic? What can you tell me about it?
You said it would drop.
T adiabatic will certainly drop. Can you give me any more information about what its value must be? You can't give me a number for it, but is there anything you can tell me about it? Lisa, what about you?
I think it's going to be in between the boiling point temperatures for each because it's coming out at 1 atm.
Okay, absolutely the right track, but when you say it's between the boiling temperatures for each, we got 3 things. Which boiling temperatures is it going to be between?
I'm saying between A and B.
Okay. All right. The proposal is whatever the adiabatic temperature is, it's got to be between the boiling point at 1 atmosphere of A, the pentane, and the boiling point at 1 atmosphere of C, the heptane. What would happen if that adiabatic temperature, if the temperature in that unit were greater, all right, than the boiling point of the heaviest compound in there? What would come out? All vapor. All right? How about if it were less than the boiling point of the most volatile compound in there? What would come out? Well, liquid. Okay. Vaporization takes a lot of energy, and vaporization is what's going on in here. Just as when you come out of a shower in an unsaturated room, in a room where the air is not saturated, water evaporates off your skin, you feel cold. The energy of vaporization has to come from someplace. Energy is not manufactured, all right, or consumed. So if it's taking energy to vaporize the pentane, hexane, and heptane, that energy must come from someplace. What can you tell me about the amount of energy taken up by vaporization and the amount of energy that's lost, the amount of internal energy that's lost? What must be true? It must be exactly the same, right? Because it's adiabatic. The net energy change in this unit is 0, so you lose this much, you must be gaining it over here, and vice versa. Okay, reverse roles again. A, write out the degree of freedom analysis on a piece of paper somewhere. B, check them out, ask questions, give hints. Go.
Yeah.
In a moment, Rich helps a group that's struggling and encourages another group that's right on track. Two good things to do in these longer exercises when you have time to float out into the class.
How many are you missing now?
We've got 3 mass balance and 1 energy balance.
Yeah, so how many equations you still try? Okay. Do you know what any of them are?
Well, right now I'm thinking in terms of
Good. Anything else? Yeah, you're golden.
At one point in the clip that follows, Rich warns about a mistake students often make and how he might set them up for it on the next test. This is another well-known teaching technique. Watch the flurry of note-taking when he does it. After that, about 45 minutes of the period have elapsed, so he gives the class a short stretch break.
Okay, let me stop you and let's see where we've gotten. Robin, what'd you come up with? Okay, 9 unknown variables written on the chart, including the outlet temperature. -3 material balances. And remember, on the test, I'm going to ask, I could ask you not just to write them, but to justify them for me. All right? Why 3 material balances? There's 3. All right? I heard 3 species from a lot of people. I heard the correct answer from 1. Josh? 3 independent species. Don't forget that magic word. All right? That's a wonderful opportunity for me to come up with trick questions on the final exam, is give you 2 species that aren't independent, ask you to do a degree of freedom analysis, and drive yourself nuts for 20 minutes to find out why it's not working. They got to be independent. In this case, they are. The same thing doesn't happen to A, B, and C. They're splitting in different ratios. Okay, 30-second stretch. Then when we come back, we'll jump into the next part. Whenever I teach a 75-minute class, I give the students a stretch break somewhere in the middle, even when they've been doing active learning. The 30 to 60 seconds I lose is more than made up by their increased alertness through the second half of the class. Okay, let's do it.
When Rich resumes, he notices that he's not going to have time for everything that remains in the exercise, so he decides to jump over a couple of parts of the problem. When you do active learning, you're in charge. If there's time for an activity, you do it. And if time is short, or you just decide you don't want to do it, you skip it.
Switch again. I've lost track of who's doing what now, but just go to the other one. If you're in a group of 3, rotate it A, B, C, A, B, C, and so forth. Let's go directly to F. All right? What I want the next person in line to do is choose references, and in this case, there's only one set of reference conditions that makes sense, and draw the inlet-outlet enthalpy table. So I want one person writing here, namely the one on the hot seat, and the other 1 or 2 questioning, giving hints if necessary how to proceed. All right? This is critical, folks. You're going to have to know how to do an inlet-outlet enthalpy table so this on the final, so this is good practice for you. Go.
3 inlets, 6 outlets.
And you have to see in a liquid.
Yeah.
The task they're on now will take a lot longer than 3 minutes, and I don't want them to drift off course. So I'll stop them after a while, do a status check to help them make sure they're on track, and then let them go again. Okay, let me interrupt you for a minute. Yeah, Katie, what about references? How many do you need? 3. Why 3? 3 species, 3 reference conditions. All right, what do you need to tell me? All right, when you specify a reference condition, what do you need to tell me? Chris? Temperature, pressure, one more thing. Phase, state, good. All right, so we need 3 reference conditions, and you need to tell me state or phase, temperature, and pressure for each. Okay, back to work. Make sure you got those, and then proceed with the table.
Yeah, I agree. I just felt proud.
So if we say that in all our... That's right. You choose it at a place where you know.
We're getting close to the end of class now, and Rich wants to reach closure, so he switches from the explainer-questioner format of TAPS to straight group work. And finally, he completes the solution himself, so he can let the class go on time.
Now, in your pair, designate one person to write, and let it be the one who did not do the enthalpy table. But now both of you work together to do part G. I want you to write out a complete set of equations for calculating everything. Everything on the chart, including T adiabatic. All right? And write them in a form that you could just slap them up onto Easy Solve and get a solution. Work together. Nice and neat. Here. Oh, no, you're doing great.
Okay.
You're doing great. Yeah, no, I'm applauding here.
Now, hopefully I did that good on my test.
Yeah, well, I hope so.
But what if you want an expression specifically?
Okay, let me stop you. All right, we're getting close to the end, so let's just do this together. I got to write 9 equations, all right? And let's not worry about the order right now. Let's just get the equations down, all right? I've got 3 material balance equations. All right, and I'll just do this rather than back and forth with you, so we can finish. I got a total mole balance, which says 100 is equal to NV plus NL, and that's my last equation. A bunch of equations, a bunch of unknowns. Throw it onto Easy Solve. Say here, solve this. Out come your answers. All right. Do you have any questions about what we just did? There's one more part there which we don't have time for. Hold on, please. All right. We're not quite done. All right. Do you have any questions about what we just did? Yeah. The order will be determined by fewest unknowns, fewest simultaneous equations. And we'd have to sit down and think, is there an order which makes sense here? It isn't at all obvious. For Easy Solve, it doesn't matter. It doesn't care what order you put them in. All right? I strongly suggest, now, I just waved my hands at you and said you do this, and you substitute in here, and substitute the limits and plug in, and you got an equation involving t to the 4th and so on. And, you know, you're nodding your heads. Some of you get it. You won't really understand it unless you sit down and do it yourself. You don't have to do the calculations, but I'd work out the equations on your own. Once you do that, then you own it. Okay, see you on Thursday. We'll have our review session. Come with questions.
And that's that. You just saw 90 students sitting through a 75-minute class. During those 75 minutes, they spent time listening to lecturing, taking notes, solving problems, asking and answering questions, correcting mistakes, and sometimes getting individual help from the instructor. As you could see if you were watching their faces, they were with the program for the entire period, thinking about what Rich wanted them to think about, doing what he wanted them to do, and learning what he wanted them to know. You never saw anyone sleeping, and there weren't many glazed eyes. Contrast that with a typical lecture, even from a good lecturer, and picture the student's eyes after only 10 or 15 minutes.
TAPS takes a whole class period, so I only use it several times during the semester. However, I do include a few short active learning exercises in every class period I teach, and I always cover the entire syllabus, contrary to most professors' fears that they'll fall hopelessly behind if they do anything but lecture. The point, though, is not that I cover it, but that they learn it, which they do.
If you're new to active learning, you'll quickly find out that some students start out resistant or even hostile to it, especially the brightest students. You'll also find that once they get past their initial discomfort, most of them end up agreeing that they learned more with less pain when they learned actively.
I think I definitely learned a lot more through the active learning process, because I know with some of the other classes where you just go and listen to a lecture, the tendency is not to pay attention. Just make sure you get the notes from somebody and you can learn it later. But with Dr. Felder's class, it's almost like you got as much out of the class as you wanted to put into it. So you go to class, and if you're actively engaged in the discussions with your classmates and paid attention to what he was saying, you just learned it that much better than if you just sat through the class and tried to learn it from the notes or anything like that. So I think it definitely helped you just get a better understanding of the material by teaching other people and things like that.
I think it's a more learn as you are in class, learn as you go method instead of learn for the test method. Wait, let me just be present in lecture or whatever, get the notes, and just, have it for the exam. But instead, you're learning day by day, and every day you're in there, you're learning more, and you're actively learning. And that was such a big difference.
In my classes, like the teamwork and stuff like that, I try to replicate that same type of environment where I thought I learned a lot and was having a lot of fun. I mean, Chemie 205, even though it was a lot of work, I had a lot of fun in that class, and it almost sounds sick and sadistic and masochistic, but it was a lot of fun. And I search for that in my other classes, and I try to replicate that in some way. I don't know how, but just working through problems in such a way, or getting into teams and such like that.
Students also come to recognize that through active learning, they learn skills beyond engineering problem solving, skills that will help them in the rest of the curriculum and in their careers.
I think through that class we just developed a certain set of people skills, I guess. In that class it kind of forced you to work together with people and kind of express your ideas, and if you differed with somebody else, you kind of had to work out together the solution and to talk about the differences between the two. But I think by making it mandatory in that class, it just made us comfortable with working with other people and talking with other people and things like that. And I mean, like I said earlier, that's just carried over into every class we've taken since then. Just, don't hesitate to talk to anybody. People I've never seen before. If I think they can help me do something, I won't hesitate to go ask them and just pick their brain about, anything they might know. But
I think the strong emphasis is placed on teamwork and developing that. You carry over to summer internships, future jobs, with working with others, being able to network with the people within the company. You can't figure something out, being able to go to other people you can talk to about it.
Something that I've kind of come to the realization of recently is that undergraduate education teaches you how to learn, not what to know. I really can't tell you equations from inorganic chemistry, yet coincidentally I can tell you some from chemical engineering, probably because of the way it was taught. But what I'm really going to take away from that is how to learn something quickly, how to approach new ideas. And that's something that's what I've been taught as an undergraduate. And Dr. Felder's class really did that. Because there are so many new kinds of ideas, he taught you different ways to approach problems.
I think when you take a class with active learning, it's more of a partnership between the professor and the students, rather than the professor up here and then the students down there, and they're just trying to, it's more like a partnership where you're both learning, and it's a good experience.
So here's what we suggest. If you haven't done this sort of thing before, try it. Periodically stop the class and ask the students to get into groups of 2 to 4 and give them something to do. Answer a question, start a problem solution, explain something in the lecture or their text or a handout. Think of a question about what you were just talking about, anything at all that's related to what you're teaching. Then give them a short time to do it. Be sure to keep it short, 2 or 3 minutes tops, and call on a few of them to share their responses. For more ideas about how to do all that, go to Rich's website and click on the link to Active and Cooperative Learning.
If the students don't seem to be responsive the first time you try this approach, don't get discouraged. It often feels awkward to students when they first attempt it. Just keep asking them to do it, and it won't be long until both you and they are comfortable with it. Once you get to that point, you'll be teaching better, and they'll be learning more. Good luck.
I can honestly say that Chemie 205 was a great morale booster for me. Okay, when I came in with physics with C's in physics, and I was like, man, I am not going to be an engineer. I cannot do this. There's something wrong with this. And so I was put in a group, and I was supposed to be like the one who's supposed to be kind of helped with my stuff, because couple of the other people had A's in physics, and they had A's in all their other math classes, and I came out of there as a really strong student. As I made an A in the class. I mean, I did really well. And I was like, wow, I can do this.